Welcome to Grow Money Business, the podcast dedicated to helping business owners grow both their wealth and business on their own terms. Here's your host, Grant Bledsoe.
Hello, everybody. Grant Bledsoe here. Welcome back to Grow Money Business. This week on the show, we're talking about financial lessons you should teach your kids. We've had this question from a couple different clients over the last 6 months or so, and it goes something like this. My kids are starting to work for the first time. They're earning a paycheck and understanding what it means to pay taxes. And I think it's a good point to teach them some basics about personal finances. What should we be talking about? This is a phenomenal juncture to have this discussion with your kids once they start to appreciate paying taxes and that all the stuff that they want costs money and that they may have to make decisions about what to get, what to buy, what not to buy, because nobody has quite enough money to buy everything that they want. And there are a few core concepts that you can do to really light the fire under your kids and instill good long-term habits surrounding saving and investing and setting themselves up for long-term financial stability. And so in this episode, I cover a few of the basic concepts, 3 specifically, that I plan to teach my kids and try to instill in them once they become a little bit older, because my kids are still really little. So that's it for today, and I hope you enjoy it. Hey everyone, I need to interject quickly to remind you all that nothing found in today's episode or any other episode of Grow Money Business should be considered financial, investing, legal, tax, fitness, or even relationship advice. It's content that you're free to use and to deploy on your own terms. And before taking any actions on content found on the show, please do consult with your tax professional, your attorney, or your financial planner. If you don't have a financial planner, head on over to threeoakswealth.com to learn more about what we do in terms of financial planning and investments and how we help clients on an ongoing basis. This week on the show, we're talking about your kids. It's all about the kids, as they say. I had an interesting discussion with a client here a couple weeks ago about her children. And she was at a point that she and her husband have 2 kids. One of them is in his first year in college. The other is in the second half of high school. And they're at a really impressionable age. Their brains are starting to expand. They've both worked a little bit and have an idea of the concept of paying taxes. And every dollar that you earn, you don't get to keep. A little bit of it gets withheld from your paycheck in a couple of different ways. And they're at this age where they're becoming interested in working to buy the stuff that they want to buy. And they're getting a lot of support from mom and dad, particularly the younger one who's still living at home. And the older one, they're getting support for college payments from mom and dad. But her one of her questions was, what kind of stuff should we be telling them? What kind of stuff should we be talking about with them as it relates to finance in order to put themselves into a really good position for their future? And I'm kind of bastardizing the way the question was asked. It was really articulate. Really what she was getting at is, what kind of stuff should we instill in the kids now that's going to set themselves up for future success? What kind of habits do we need to build? What can we do to really light that light bulb off so that they're able to spend a little bit less than they earn and put themselves on good footing financially in the future? And I made a short video about this that went on our YouTube channel here, must have been a couple of months ago. And I thought that this week's episode of the podcast would be a good opportunity to expound on that topic a little bit, because anybody who has kids, this is an issue. You want to instill in your kids a good work ethic. You want to raise them to be responsible citizens and all of that fun stuff, productive members of society and so forth. And teaching them good financial habits at an early age can really get them in a good place longer term. The earlier you start investing, the better off you are. And so I thought it would be helpful today to cover on the show a few core financial concepts that are just really helpful to talk about with your kids. And so the 3 that I want to cover are saving, the power of compound interest, and the power of tax-advantaged investing. Those are the main 3.
Now, there are other things that are kind of ancillary to this discussion that I'll talk about. For you business owner folks, if you have any opportunity to employ your kids in the business when they're growing up for doing bona fide work, we definitely want to take advantage of that. That's a great tax planning opportunity. And depending on how our time goes today, I might circle back and cover that at the end. So the first concept, right? My kids are little. They're 2, 4, and 6 years old. So they're a little bit green to have this conversation yet. But once I start charging my 6-year-old rent here later in the year, maybe he'll get the idea. Just kidding. That's a few years off yet. But the first thing that I plan to do with my kids is talk about the importance of saving. And we don't have any kind of allowance system in my house yet. The kids are a little bit too young yet for that. They do have some, chores. They've got to make their bed and brush their teeth and that kind of stuff. But we do plan to expand on that as they get a little bit older. And so from an early age, what I want to do is have them responsible to do certain things around the house in exchange for some kind of weekly allowance to build that momentum toward work ethic and being compensated for helping others and adding value to the house. And, there are all sorts of philosophies out there. I'm sure some of you are listening to this saying that that ought to be their responsibility in the first place. They shouldn't be compensated for that. You're, filling the fridge with food every week. That should be their compensation. Yeah, I can get on board with that. But this whole financial thing is near and dear to my heart, and I want my kids to seek some kind of direct reward for doing stuff around the house. So this is how I plan to start it. And I understand that there are, debit cards and bank accounts catered to kids that give them a foray into this sphere and build some responsibility and know-how without, having too much risk. I don't know anything about that stuff yet. But at any rate, lesson number 1 is going to be the importance of saving. And if you make $10 doing a chore and you go out and you spend all of it immediately, you're not going to have anything left over. And for your older teenagers out there who are working jobs, your college students out there who are working jobs, maybe they're responsible for making a contribution toward tuition payments, maybe they're paying their own rent, whatever it may be, use a legitimate monthly budget. Or if you have $1,000 coming in from some kind of part-time work that you have to pay tax on that, you don't get the full $1,000 after you pay taxes. And then you have other expenses. But every dollar that you can avoid spending is going to wind up in your bank account at the end of the month. And it seems so, I almost have a hard time explaining it. I live in this world every day, every minute of my professional life. It's lost. It's often lost on me that this is kind of a new concept for younger people. And so when the lesson that you're trying to convey is when you're making a decision about what to do with that cash, you're on Amazon perusing new shoes, or you're walking down the grocery store trying to decide what to put in your cart for that week of food, or whatever the decision is, you have a lot of choices with regard to how to spend your money. And anytime you can make the choice that leaves you with less cost, that's going to result in more cash being in the bank account for a future occasion. And that concept is just really important to go over in detail. And so that's going to be lesson number 1. And as soon as the kids are old enough to actually start receiving some kind of cash award, I'll start probably by giving them cash and putting it in some kind of piggy bank, and then we'll evolve pretty quickly to opening a bank account in probably jointly in both of our names, so that they can see this stuff grow and grow and grow and grow over time. Now, lesson number 2 is the power of compound interest. This one is not quite as basic. It should be taught in high school. I don't believe it is in most high schools. And it's the next logical step after you talk about the power of saving and the importance of saving. And you can even give your kids target. targets. In general, if you can save between 10 and 20% of your income each month, you're going to be in a really strong financial position for the rest of your life. You're going to have enough over a 40-year career. If you save 15, 20% of your income, you're probably going to have enough to retire on, as long as you're a good steward of your investments. That's just a really good habit to instill in people from a young age. Now, where the light bulb really goes off is when you get into compounding over time. And the way that I like to explain this is just to do it on a spreadsheet and build a big table wherein, let's say you make $1,000 a month, you spend 900 of it, and you have $100 left over. And with that $100, let's say that you earn 2.5% per year in interest from the bank. And this is the right way to explain it, by the way. We're not going to jump to like a 7 or an 8 or a 9% investment return. You always start with something low to make your point. In the first column, you have the month that you're in, say January, and then the next column you have the year. You have beginning balance of 0. You have contributions of $100. Growth, which is $100 multiplied by 0.025 divided by 12 to get a monthly amount of interest at the annual rate of 2.5%. And then you add those things together and you get the balance at the end of the month. Now, the next row down, you start that over. Your beginning balance is $102.50. You add $100 to it. Both the 102.50 and the 100 you just added to the pile grow by 2.5%, and then you add them together, and that's your balance at the end of the next month. So show them how this all fits together mathematically by going through each of those steps. What you don't want to do is tinker around on a spreadsheet and build this and then say, hey, Fred, come on in here, I want to show you something, and show them a whole bunch of cells all at once. You want to build it with them alongside you. Now, the next step is take all that information and drag it down for a year. And it'll show how much you have at the end of 1 year. I don't know off the top of my head what that number is. I could have figured it out, but I didn't. But it'll show that obviously if you save $100 a month plus the interest, you'd have a little bit more than $1,200 at the end of the year, which isn't that exciting. But the point you're trying to make is that your interest is going to earn interest of its own, which creates that hockey stick growth that we see when you pull up the chart here later on in this discussion. So the point you're trying to make is just to get in the habit of saving so that you can put yourself in a position for those savings to grow and compound for you. Because every time you put the $100 in, you had to earn that $100 from your efforts at work, right? You had to work for that $100. What you want is for the $100 to work on your behalf thereafter. And so you put it into an account, you get 2.5% per year. Well, guess what? The $2.50 that you made, now that I'm walking through this, I understand my math was wrong. At the end of month 1, you don't have 102.50, you have closer to $100.02, maybe something like that. At any rate, $100.20 probably. What you're trying to convey is that the interest that you earn after the first year is going to earn interest of its own. And you want your money, that's what it means to have your money working on your behalf. The $2.50 that you earned, you didn't have to work for that. Your money did. And the more that you can add to the pot, the bigger the pot, the more it's going to work on your behalf so that you don't have to directly. So that's how I would start. I would start just by building this table in a spreadsheet with your kid. Take a look at what the first year looks like if you save $100 a month, and then stretch it out to the next year. After 2 years, how much do you have? After 3 years, how much do you have? After 5 years, how much do you have? And at that point, show them that after 5 years, that's 60 months. If you've saved $100 a month, that's $6,000 plus whatever the growth is. And show them that all you had to do is work and put this $100 a month in there. Yet your balance after 5 years is whatever that works out to be, maybe, I don't know, $7,000 or something like that. That's what you're trying to convey. Now, at that point, after you show them 5 years of compounding at 2.5%, which is really modest, it's less than what you get in a high yield bank account right now, high yield savings account right now. The next step would be bumping up the rate of return to something that resembles a properly invested portfolio over a long period of time. Okay, it's not safe, right? Your bank deposits at 2.5% are FDIC insured. If you put that into an investment account and get 7.5% instead of 2.5%, look at how much that impacts the balance. That's exactly how I would approach it with your kid. And again, the point is the same. You had to work to put $100 into this account. But once it's in there, it's working for you, so you don't have to work as much in the future. And the difference between whatever the balance is at 7.5%, $100 contributions after 5 years, and $6,000, that's what that means. The more you can save, the more that your money's going to work for you. It starts to get powerful when we stretch this out a little further. So at this point, you've only shown them 5 years of that saving and compounding. Now stretch it out to 10 years. What happens? Stretch it out to 20 years. What happens? Stretch it out to 30 years. What happens? And the point that I would make at this point in the discussion would be you stretch it all the way out to 30 years of just $100 a month of saving. How much do you have at the end of that 30 years? And how much did you actually put in? 36, what is that? $36,000 would be what you actually put in. You're going to have a heck of a lot more than that in the account after 30 years at 7.5% interest per year, compounded monthly, right? And so you show them, look, this is how much you have after 30 years. You only put 36,000 into it. And the next point you're trying to make is look at the differences of doing this for an additional 5 years. Look at how much you have after 30 years compared to how much you have after 25 years. Look at how much you have at 25 years as opposed to 20 years. And 5-year increments work pretty good up until that point. And then at 20 years, look at how much you have versus doing it for just 10 years. And the point you're trying to make is that this snowball effect of your savings earning a little bit on your behalf, and then those earnings continue to earn interest and grow on their own. That's the power of compounding that you're trying to convey. So if you start just a few years earlier and get in the habit of saving a little bit of every paycheck that you ever earn, that's how you get that long-term compound growth. And this is probably the point in the conversation when I would highlight the whole table that you've built and hit that little chart icon in Excel. And I would show them graphically what that chart looks like. It's not linear. It's not going to go up in lockstep every time you put another $100 in. It's going to go up exponentially to where it looks like a hockey stick and a really steep slope at the end of it. That's the power here. When you get started early and you get in the habit of saving a little bit out of every paycheck at an early age, that's what's going to happen over time, is compound growth. So you don't have to work as much in the future. You just have to work at the beginning to put the money in, and then your money can work on your behalf. That's what starts to light the light bulb for people who are young and starting to realize, holy smokes, my car insurance is how much? Gas, to fill my gas tank, it costs me $75 every time. I'm going to have to work some more hours at this job, or I'm going to have to make some more money. This is where these things start to take place. And so when your kids are at the point where they're legitimately facing, I only have so much money, yet I want to do all these things. Mom and Dad, can I have some more money for that? When that question comes up, that's when you present this discussion to them. Now, the third thing that we need to incorporate into the discussion, you should have a little bit of momentum at this phase of the conversation. And if you don't, I'd probably ask them their thoughts and impressions. Maybe you've not explained something in quite enough detail, or There might be some other reason they're not terribly fired up about it. But at that point, you talk about tax-advantaged investing. And so you can explain the differences between traditional and Roth IRAs if you want. There are a lot of ways to approach it, but I think the way that I would approach it would just say, okay, we've ignored taxes and all this. You save $100 a month for 30 years. This is how much you have if you earn 7.5% per every single year on those savings. But how much money do you have to make in order to have $100 a month to save? Right? You divide or you multiply. No, you divide $100 by 1 minus whatever your tax rate is. Call it 20%. For someone in that position, works out to $125. So you have to earn $125 in order to come out after taxes with $100. But what if your savings occurred in a tax-deferred retirement account? What if this investing, this compound growth, didn't occur in the bank or in a brokerage account? What if it was a result of depositing $100 a month into an IRA? Well, then you get to keep the whole $125. You don't have to pay tax on it. Yes, you have to pay Social Security and Medicare, and that's probably all your kid is paying right now. If you look at their pay stub, unless you make more than 12, 13 grand a year, they're not going to be paying any income tax, which is fair. But using this example, you get to keep the whole $125. You don't have to pay tax on it. And so rather than contributing $100, you can contribute $125. What's that do to the balance after 5, 10, 25, 30 years? It increases it dramatically by, number one, saving diligently, getting in the habit. Number two, using compound growth to your advantage, allowing your money to work for you over a long period of time, allow your interest to earn interest, and utilizing tax-advantaged retirement accounts that the government wants us to use because they want us to save for our own retirement. What are the differences between all these three? And then you can even go back to the chart and say, look, if you put $125 in instead of $100, what if you do that and you start 5 years earlier? What's the difference? And guess what? You can put $6,000, or through this year, I guess it's up a little bit more, $6,500 into a traditional IRA. What if you saved a little bit more than $125? What if you made enough to fully fund your retirement accounts every year? And then you let those compound over a 30-year period. That's a huge difference. What does that allow you to do? Well, it allows you to make decisions later on in life, like maybe retiring a little bit earlier, or maybe taking a job that's really attractive to you, but doesn't pay quite as much as the job that pays well, but you really dislike. All those kinds of career decisions that adults like you and me have to face all the time. It just gives you flexibility and options down the road. So those are the three things, right? There's probably a better way to explain them. I haven't had too many of these conversations yet. A few of them with clients, kids, kind of few and far between. But since my kids aren't of that age, I don't have that discussion quite as frequently as we have other common financial discussions with clients in the practice. Nevertheless, there's a window of opportunity where that discussion can have a dramatic impact on your kids. And so you're trying to get them to understand the power of compounding, the power of tax-advantaged investing, and connect the dots to where they can see the benefit for them if they get started early, they get a decent rate of return over a long period of time, and they do the saving in retirement accounts. Whoa, wait a second. If I do that, then I could buy that new Mustang, in my mid-20s or something like that. Even though auto purchases are not generally where we want to devote our assets, getting them to connect the dots is what's powerful, right? It's pretty hard to fathom how you could put $100,000 down to buy a house or buy a car for $50,000 when you're 18 making close to minimum wage flipping burgers at In-N-Out or something like that, which is a great job for young people. You're just not in your career yet. You're not making a whole lot of money at that point. So you want them to connect the dots, whatever that means to them. Maybe they want to, I don't know, buy a house on the lake or something like that. You can connect the two in terms that will resonate with the kids. That's really the whole idea. Now, I mentioned at the beginning of the episode that what we want to do, if you have the opportunity, is employ your kids in your business. We have an episode about that. I was just looking through the archives earlier this morning of our episodes and content and topic and so forth. A while back, we did do an episode on the specifics of this. I would suggest listening to it if this is at all interesting to you. The deal is that as long as your kids can do bona fide work for the business, you can employ them. There's no minimum age. You can't employ your 4-year-old to balance your checkbook or do bookkeeping, right? It has to be legitimate work. But if they're on payroll, then it creates earned income that can be used to fund a Roth IRA. If you have a 12-year-old doing a little bit of work for you around the office, think about stretching this compounding power out an additional 10 years. You put the kid on the payroll, they have earned income, and they don't even need to be the one to fund the account. You can put the dollars in on their behalf and still justify the contribution and let them keep the cash if you really want to, as to show them the fruits of their labor. But beyond that, your kids aren't going to have to file a tax return unless they have income that's greater than the standard deduction, which again is, I can't remember what it is in 2023, somewhere between $12,000 and $13,000. So if your business has $300,000 of self-employment income at the end of the year that you and the rest of your family have to pay tax on, then you employ the kid in the family, have them do legitimate work, pay them up to $12,000, and that $12,000 is going to come out income tax free and still stay within the family because it's under your kid's standard deduction and not attached to your tax return. It's a really great deal. There are things that you ought to think about, and don't do this haphazardly. Make sure that you have a job description and keep hours. You can't just put them on the clock for no reason at all, like I say. So go back and listen to that episode if it's halfway interesting, and talk to your tax professional too. Tax preparers and tax planners love this because it checks a lot of boxes when thinking about long-term tax planning. You can even open up education savings accounts and put money in there tax-free, which if you make contributions otherwise are not generally tax-free. That's something that you have to pay tax on. So a lot of benefits of that if your kids are of working age and you have the juice to put them on the payroll. Okay, that's it for today. Hope this was helpful, and I'll talk to you all again soon.
Thanks for tuning in to Grow Money Business, the podcast dedicated to helping business owners grow both their wealth and business on their own terms. Be sure to subscribe to the podcast on iTunes, Google Play, or wherever you digest podcasts to ensure you don't miss out on future episodes and announcements. And feel free to submit questions to growmoneybusiness.com.